Hey, let's talk about the game, man.
Let's do it.
And clearly, your expertise is offensive line play. You think that Kansas City offensive line can hold up against Hassan Reddick, Fletcher Cox, that what that Eagles defensive front has got?
It's so funny because you think about, when we do these shows in the regular season, and so much we talk about is the quarterbacks, the pass catchers, maybe the pass rushers. It's all about stopping the passing game, it seems like. But more times than not, for whatever reason, it seems like when you get into these Super Bowl matchups, the conversations always turn to the line play. And I'm not exactly sure why that is. I haven't been able to put my thumb on it specifically, but here we are again in a Super Bowl matchup that's going to come down to offensive and defensive lines. And you got the Philadelphia Eagles, the best line in the NFL. They've stayed remarkably healthy for most of the season. They got all their studs out there in this game going against Chiefs defensive line, who's pretty good. They've got maybe the defensive player of the year in Chris Jones, who's made a difference for that team for several years and certainly has been a huge part of closing out games this year where, hey, they get the lead with Patrick Mahomes. Now, hey, Chris, it's your job. Go out, get the sacks, end the game for us. But he's going to meet his match because there's no weaknesses on this Philadelphia Eagles offensive line. It's not like he can go over the guard or then switch out over the tackle and go against Leighton Johnson or any of the guys in that offensive line that have made multiple Pro Bowls and all pros. So it's going to be a big challenge for him because he's one of those guys that he's a great player, but as an interior defensive lineman, you can move them around and find those matchups that you like and use that to your advantage. It's something they're not going to be able to do in this game on Sunday.
And the difficulty that it's going to present Kansas City's defense whenever you combine an offensive line as good as Philly has with a quarterback that can run like Jalen Hurts, it puts you in a bind defensively. Like, do you add extra guys to the rush and possibly expose yourself where a quarterback could step up and have a ton of room to run downfield? Or do you sit back and try and kind of spread the net and keep everything in front of you, but that's going to be lighter on the rush? Like, how do you think Kansas City is going to attack it that way? Just, as we always hear, just try to be multiple.
Yeah, I think they want to be multiple. And I think at first what they're going to try to do is make Jalen Hurts a pocket passer, right? Because that's one of the things he doesn't do the best. Like, he's a great runner. He's really good when he has the RPO opportunities. But if you just make him be a Tom Brady statue in the pocket, that's what he doesn't have the most experience doing. And he's not one of the top 5 guys throwing from within the pocket, but you put all the pieces together, and that's why he's an MVP candidate, right? Because he does the RPO. He does provide a significant threat running the football. And, oh, by the way, if you try to take some of that stuff away, that's when he starts hitting you down the field with some of his stud receivers like A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, guys who both had over 1,000 yards receiving this season. So they're multiple on offense, and I think that's how you beat them on defense. You try to be multiple. You try to somehow keep Jalen Hurts in the pocket, but that's where those RPOs come in, and that's why it's so difficult to defend. Teddy, you would know this, like, as soon as you want to try to play man coverage and put more dudes in the box, all of a sudden now they can target the person who can go and make them be in conflict. And now that guy doesn't know if it's a run, if it's a quarterback pulled design run, or if he's throwing over the top of my head. And so that split second that you're buying, you're slowing everybody down on the defense. And then that's where these huge holes and these huge windows show up because they've got some really talented pass catchers on the outside that can get free if you do try to play those man coverages.
Looking at Kansas City's offense against that Philadelphia defense, right? And right, the game within the game is that O-line versus that Philly D-line. But what do you think? What do you think is the best way for Kansas City to attack Philadelphia? Because that front 7 is legit, but it's not like they have a bunch of weaknesses in the back end. So how do you think, what do you think Andy Reid will do with Mahomes in that offense to try to exploit Philly's defense?
Yeah, I think really the only matchup that the Eagles are going to try to exploit is Hassan Reddick on Andrew Wiley, their right tackle. He was a guy that was actually with me in Cleveland, and he does a nice job, but he's not at that Pro Bowl level that you usually need to be able to limit a guy like Hassan Reddick, who's a 20 sack guy on the season, who's a dynamic pass rusher and can beat you in multiple ways. And he's got the speed that once he beats his block, he can get after Patrick Mahomes, even as quick as Patrick Mahomes is. He's a guy that's difficult to get down, but Hassan Reddick will be able to chase him down. So that's one of those matchups that I think the Chiefs are really concerned about. And so for me, it's going to come down to Travis Kelce in the middle of the field versus the Eagles, right? Because how are the Eagles going to handle when they put two tight ends on the field? Are they going to treat Travis Kelce like he's a tight end? Are they going to treat him like a receiver? Are they going to try to put one of their safeties on him and try to go small and go athletic? Well, then you might see the Chiefs try to run the football a little bit more. But if they try to take away some of the stuff in the middle of the field with Travis, if they put an extra guy in the box, now I think that's when you're going to try to get down the field. But for the Eagles, they're in a good position, right? Because their pass rush is really good. And I think one of the stories that maybe we haven't talked about enough is how the Chiefs receivers are pretty banged up coming into this game. Mecole Hardman is out. And then there are other guys that they've been leaning on most of the season, like Juju Smith-Schuster, Kadarius Toney. Those guys came out of the AFC Championship game banged up. So it'll be interesting to see. I think the Eagles are going to dare them to try to throw the football down the field a little bit and prove that those guys are healthy enough to win in some man-to-man coverage down the field.
I think that's an interesting point with, the D line from Philly being able to chase Mahomes down if he does get outside the pocket. He does have the ankle, which, he looked okay in the AFC Championship game, made a couple of throws on the run, and he's had some extra time to heal up. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. But is it me, or has Mahomes become a less effective outside the pocket? He's got the receivers that are going to be banged up, and it feels like Tyreek Hill, like that was the real, he would get out, scramble around. Tyreek Hill, you'd lose him in the secondary and they'd hit you way downfield. It just doesn't feel like they've been as dangerous without him in that regard. Have you seen the same thing?
Yeah, they don't have as many chunk plays as they used to, right? Because they had the cheetah, they had the fastest man in football out there, but without him, Mahomes is not taking the chances that he was in the past, where he would try to run around, extend plays, because he knew, hey, if I can get to 4.5 or 5 seconds into the play on the shot clock, like my guy's going to get open. Nobody can cover this guy. And if, God bless them, they take two safeties and just turn and run them towards the end zone, like there's going to be a lot of free space, a lot of green grass underneath for Travis Kelce and these other receivers who are pretty good. And so that was always their formula. And I think Patrick Mahomes leaned on that a little bit, maybe at times more than he should, and it caused a few more turnovers. And they're actually a better offense this year, in my opinion, because they're more well-rounded without Tyreek Hill. They're the number one points, total yards, passer rating offense in the NFL this year. And you don't do that by not mastering all the X's and O's and the fundamentals of Andy Reid's offense. And that's where I think Patrick Mahomes and this offense has gotten better this year, is there's less risks being taken. So they're not turning the football over quite as much. And within that offense, I think they're more rhythmic and more robotic, and they can beat you in multiple different ways based on the plays that are going in there. And it's not just backyard street ball with Patrick Mahomes to Tyreek Hill anymore. A lot of times it's like, hey, this is the specific play, the look we want to get. And they're much more, I think, in tune to the details. And it's made Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion, a better quarterback, because he can still get outside the pocket, like we saw in the game 2 weeks ago, where he can get outside the pocket, he can beat you with his legs, and he's got those crazy arm angles, but he doesn't have to do that anymore. They don't have to rely on those.
Looking at the coaching matchup, right? We're only a few years removed from Belichick breaking Sean McVay's brain, right? How valuable or how important do you think it is that Andy Reid has been here? He's done it as a head coach. And then, just Nick Sirianni, he's pressed all the right buttons this season, but he just hasn't been on this stage.
So Mitchell Schwartz and I, who do a podcast every Monday, and he was with the Chiefs a few years ago when they won the Super Bowl. He was their right tackle. We were talking about this very thing earlier on in the week, and he said that he thought Andy Reid's experience in the Super Bowl, going all the way back when he was the Eagles head coach, really made a huge difference in the Super Bowl that they won when Mitch was there, because he said all week Andy was really good at letting them understand, hey, it's still football, guys, all right? But there are going to be some differences, but not make a huge deal about the differences, but emphasize them by saying, like, look, the time between when you normally come out of the tunnel and then the national anthem and all the hoopla that happens before kickoff, it's going to be a lot longer. So don't go out there. We know everyone's going to be excited. Don't go out there and blow through a bunch of energy because you're so excited, like warming up and taking sprints up and down the field and jumping around. Like, find a way in practice to go through a little routine. This is how much time you have, and figure out what that routine is mentally, where you're able to focus on the game. You're going to able to be warm when the kickoff happens, but you're not just blowing through a ton of energy. That's nervousness that you don't normally get in a regular game. And they actually practice it during the week, and they go through the exact same thing. They do like the mock game where you're actually doing a full on practice of how long their halftime is. And he breaks it down into 5-minute segments. Whereas a normal halftime in the NFL, like you guys know, it's like you're in there, you grab an orange and you're out of there and you're back on the field. Maybe the coaches holler at you about 2 things that you're not even paying attention to, because half the guys are in the bathroom taking a leak. The other guys are getting their ankles taped by the trainer, and the 2 or 3 guys that are paying attention on the practice squad, and they're not even playing anyway. So there's really nothing
totally
that happens. That was Gabe. There was really nothing that really happens during a regular season or even a normal playoff game during halftime. But because the halftime show is so long, you actually have time to get stuff done. And so Andy Reid breaks it down in these 5-minute segments. He coaches them up on it. He emphasizes it during the week. They go through it during their practice as if it is a halftime. And so I think those guys are very well prepared for the differences in a Super Bowl matchup versus a lot of these other teams where coaches maybe are new to it or haven't been through it as many times as Andy Reid has.
No, it's fascinating. There are some guys that, left from Philly from that Super Bowl run that they had, but I think it's different whenever you have the top-down approach. So it's interesting. I guess as you take everything in and just kind of look at the overall scope of the game, do you have a side that you're leaning as things sit right now?
Yeah, I think going into the game, I was thinking the Eagles because of their dominance on the O and D line. Like, Chris Jones has been the equalizer on that Chiefs defense, and I don't think he's going to be able to get home much against this Eagles offensive line. And then the Eagles defensive line, it's not a good matchup for anybody that wants to throw the football. And certainly the Chiefs have been solid all season long, but there are going to be some weaknesses. There are going to be moments when they're going to get home. But to me, the thing that really tipped the scales in my favor is the fact that the Chiefs receivers are pretty banged up. And the Eagles have a great secondary. Darius Slay, James Bradbury, Avonte Maddox, those guys are studs against a healthy receiver core. And I just think that when you come into a game and you're in a mash unit in your receiver core, and that's what you kind of rely on is throwing the football, I think that might be just a little bit too much for the Chiefs to overcome.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one, Joe, man. It's always great catching up. And I know you can't say anything, but congrats on the Hall of Fame, man. That's I think you're the first. You got to be the first guy that I actually played with that's getting inducted in the Hall of Fame, right? It's got to be the case.
I would think so. The only guy that has gotten in that was from my class or younger so far, I think, is Calvin Johnson.
Oh, well, never mind. I played with Calvin in Detroit, so you're
there.
The
you go.
second
So
guy.
I'm the second. Oh man, I could have put that on my resume. Damn.
Hey, it's all right.
Gabe Ikard's first Hall of Famer he played with. But nonetheless, thank you for the great honor and the congratulations of being on this show. It's been truly wonderful. I hope to do it again soon, my friends.
Probably the most important thing that will happen to you this week.
There's no doubt.
You're the man,
Thanks,
Jesse.
Appreciate it, guys. We'll talk to you later.